We also didn't talk about that end credits song. What the hell?
Real.
What? That's like gotta be a first in Star Wars.
I didn't
history.
really care for it. I think it's a good song, but I don't think it fits.
I didn't even hear it. I stopped it.
You
when
didn't
I was
even get
Dude,
that
I
far.
threw
In the
my
episode.
fucking controller about the
It was
end.
like an actual
It was like
song.
like when you go to the movies and they end with like their single for the movie. That's what it felt like, and it was kind of weird. And I was like, "This is
my god." Okay,
Frank, are we still recording?
Yeah,
I'm like on my phone.
yeah, but like,
we're not on the
it's
show
not gonna
anymore.
make
Like,
this is gonna be the cold opening. This is gonna be the
this is
cold
a
opening,
cold
bro.
opening, you're right.
Could be that's actually a really solid cold opening. Cut to it.
Welcome back to Scoundrels Inc., another Star Wars podcast. I am Frank Janish, and I am with Brandon Hanna and Kevin Smets this week to talk about The Acolyte, Episode 7, titled Choice. And I know everyone's very excited to talk about it. The internet was abuzz, claiming it the best episode ever. I feel like I say that type of thing almost on every intro for every episode we've done of this show. And I do say it very facetiously, but nonetheless, Brandon, Kevin, how you guys doing? Kevin,
Well, this episode was, he said facetious. You mean feces. This episode was feces.
Oh, right. That's okay. Really, right at the top? Come on. You just let the people think for a little bit. One thing, kind of like the episode that we thought that we were watching, like episode 3 and episode... Anyways. Brandon, how you doing?
Yeah.
I didn't mind it. I liked it.
Yeah, I look, overall, I liked it. And then I watched it again and I said I liked it fine. A little less than my first watch through when I initially watched it. So yeah, it's a fine.
When you
episode.
watched it again, did it mean you watched episode 3 again, or 7 again, or were you confused, or did you watch 3 twice, then 7 twice, or did you watch 3 and then 7 and you're confusing yourself as thinking you watch it twice?
No. I'm smart enough not to confuse myself that way.
Right.
So
I mean, Kevin, it's from a different perspective. Okay.
Really? I saw Back to the Future Part 2. I know how you do different perspectives.
Oh, you don't
They were
like Back
using
to the Future Part 2? Is that what you're saying? You don't like?
No,
Back
I
to the
love
Future
that.
Part
But
2?
they were in this. They were using the same
Interesting.
camera freaking shots. There were scenes where like, why are we watching this again?
Different angle.
I'll get
bro.
into it. Let me.
Different
Yeah,
angle.
we'll get into it. But okay, Brandon, what are your overall thoughts heading into the episode or coming out of the episode?
What happened to me?
No, we pretty much got it, guy. Well, we'll get back to you.
I'm like Brad Pitt from the Ocean's 11 movies, man. I'm eating.
Just eating everything. Yeah, okay, Rusty.
I kind of liked it. The stuff with episode 3, everyone was complaining, "Oh my god, they made the Jedi look so bad. The Jedi are like forcing the Republic doctrine on a planet that's not even in the Republic. What's going on? Blah, blah, blah." And then you watch this episode and it's like, boom, the Jedi were actually instructed not to interfere. Oh, but May and Osha are too old to train. Boom, they say that in this episode, dude. They say it.
But they still are going in there and trying to take, like, they're still going into another culture.
Indara is probably a doodoo
Oh my
head.
god, they're treating the kids like not kids. They're treating them like adults. Well, that's their culture, and they're coming in to like appropriate them.
Nah, only Soul is, because Soul is trying to look for excitement, adventure. A Jedi craves not these things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more nuance in this episode than people are giving it credit for, to be honest. Like, and it gets into what the Jedi Council is instructed, what Indara is instructed, and then Soul and all his motivations and why he's doing what he's doing is a very interesting conversation to be had if you would have it.
It's highly
Kevin,
flammable stone.
Hey, I
never knew stone was so flammable that it could just catch on fire.
We'll definitely get into. I definitely do have my criticisms of the episode, and we can get into that after we discuss the episode. I kind of want to. I mean, unless we want to get into it right now, Kevin.
Well, I want someone to ask me what my overall thoughts were.
I'm asking you. Do you want to get into the criticisms, or do you want to give your overall?
I want
thoughts?
to first say here's the thing about Star Wars fandom in general, and it's okay to love an episode like I liked episode 5, and then shit or not like an episode, and still have an overall thought or feeling about the season. This episode just didn't do it for me. I think in retrospect, both flashbacks didn't do it for me. I think it's cool sometimes to take a pause and do a flashback episode, but I think in this, there was no big reveal in this one that was made it made episode 3 totally moot. Like, I know you're seeing it from a different angle, and yeah, okay, now you realize that Osha or May wasn't trying to kill her sister, whereas episode 3 was showing that. But it's like, it felt like a lot of it, you're rewatching the same thing, and it wasn't like Back to the Future 2 how it does it, where you're really seeing it from different angles. Sometimes they're like reusing the same shots, and like I'm like, why are we watching some of this again? But I will say, the fighting in this episode was excellent. Cal Naka going Wookiee ape shit on everybody was great. I love the speeder bikes. The mother had some bangers of lines, dude. I love when she says, "I choose to be a mother, not a leader."
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, and I loved the line about like your hubris or whatever she says about the Jedi are one day gonna mean the end of the Jedi, right? So there are things that I like about it. I just think that this show, there was no big reveal like, aha, this is why we're seeing all this footage again, except the point, like, did the girl, all the coven die because they got cut off from Kelnaka? Is that what we're seeing? Like, if it was a thing where the women were all catching on fire and and Sol was there with Indara and or whatever, and they're like, let's just go and leave them locked in there. That's a big bombshell. There was no big bombshell to necessitate another flashback episode. That I really firmly believe that the show would have been better served if either the flashback was just the cold open to the new show, but that takes away the mystery of it, or you could have done what the Nolan brothers did with the Dark Knight trilogy and Man of Steel, where you piecemeal little flashbacks throughout the show, better informing you of why we're seeing these flashbacks, and you could have got to some of this stuff. There's no reason to see all of this stuff for a second time, in my opinion. So that was my big failing of it. But like I thought the speeder bike stuff in the fog was rad. I thought that the Torben getting to show off a little of his Jedi moves is badass, and the Kelnaka fight was badass as well. Some of the, like I said, some of the one-liners are good too. So there is stuff to like about it. But overall, I was just like, I was almost bored at parts where I was like, yeah, I've seen this. And maybe it's because I didn't like the flashback episode in the first place, so now I'm forced to revisit all this, and it's just, to me, it just felt like the new stuff wasn't that great. If you go on Peacock right now, you could watch The Office extended episodes, the years that Michael Scott was in it, and it's great. Instead of 22 minutes that was the broadcast runtime, some of the episodes are 35 minutes, some of them are 40, but some of them are like 26, 27. And this just felt like we were watching episode 3 with new scenes cut in that we could have seen in the third episode. And this episode existing makes the third episode rendering moot. There's no point to it. So for me, I just thought it was kind of a largely a wasted affair, and that the same content re-edited a different way, whether it's through flashbacks throughout the season or just combining this and episode 3 and maybe putting it at this point during the season to save the mystery, would have served better. That is my actual thoughts without heckling and, making jokes and stuff like that.
I'm going to actually meet you kind of like halfway with everything you said, because I will say, after watching the episode the first time I said to myself, I think episode 3 and episode 7 could have been all one episode if you're going to do a flashback episode. Now, the other part of this is the whole storytelling narrative in the style of Rashomon, right? The homage to Rashomon. And I remember, have any of you guys seen The Last Duel with Matt Damon, the Ridley Scott movie? Right? So they do the same thing there too. There's 3 different stories, perspectives on what happens in that story, in that movie. I'm not going to ruin it for you if you want to see it. But basically, it's the Rashomon effect. There's 3 different perspectives. And one of the things that I had kind of like an issue with that movie was that the points of view, and this kind of feeds into what you were saying, Kevin, the points of view weren't massively contradictory enough in this episode to warrant, I guess, the Rashomon homage, because I think when you don't have the drastic contradictory points of view, then yeah, it kind of seems like you're retreading what we saw in episode 3, and I think to an extent that is true. However, I think what this episode did was reveal the motivations of Saul, the real actions by Indara and Torben and Coral and Asaya. Like that, it revealed more of what actually happened, albeit from a Jedi point of view, the way episode 3 was from the Coven / Osha point of view. So I appreciate what the episode did in that respect. The whole homage to Rashomon, I think, could have been done away, or you just, like I said, make it all one episode. But if you are going to do the Rashomon effect type of storytelling, I think the point of view from the Jedi should have been way more contradictory to really hammer that point home and really pay, I guess, I don't know, I don't want to say make more respect to the Rashomon movie, but like, I think if they were going to go that route, I think it could have been way more contradictory. I think there should have been way more questions from the Jedi point of view, contradicting the Coven point of view. And I think at times there was that, but not enough, I think, to necessitate 2 separate episodes at the end of the day. However, I think what I do take away from the episode overall is Soul's motivations and perspective in Dara, what happened with Kelnaka and Torben, and we can discuss, motivations. Does that make sense? Did that make sense? Or what have you? And I think they're all legitimate criticisms. Brandon, do you have any kind of thoughts around anything that Kevin or I have just laid out?
Yeah, I think I disagree a little bit. I thought there was like quite a bit different. Like I said, in episode 3, the Jedi really come off as like dicks. And in this one, we really see their motivations are like he even says, like, honorable, which they are. But then you also see the faults of Soul and the faults of Torben and their, rash decision making and their, following their emotions instead of, the Jedi way of doing things caused a lot of problems. And it was interesting to see that perspective. And then also what I wanted to say before was justice for Indara, because we all thought she was going to be revealed to be some like evil mastermind behind everything that happened on Brendock. And she was really like the most level-headed, thoughtful person of them all. And she actually was like powerful enough to stop the Coven from, controlling Kelnaka and all that, which was really cool to see. And yeah, I don't know if they died but like, it would be horrible if they didn't die and they just let them all burn to death.
Yeah.
No, they died. Laura on
Jedi
Way.
Well.
Laura on the Jedi Way said the audio description says that they die.
Mm-hmm,
oh, really?
Which is interesting. But
what kills them?
That's not how the Force works. I don't know. Maybe it does. But for me, I think the biggest, jaw-dropping aha moment of the episode was when Soul made the active decision to save Osha and let May die. That was the part when I was watching the episode and I went, oh, that's what this is all about. Shit. Like, okay.
Well, I think there's another part to that. I agree with you there, Brandon, but I also think Soul killing Anastasia is kind of like the also big reveal of this. I was like, oh, fuck. Soul,
yeah, then that part was confusing too.
What would you do? The girl's going psycho, turning into smoke.
Oh, no. I get it. I get how he could get to that spot, but also because he was so wrapped up emotionally. But anyways, Brandon, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I'm like, are we gonna find out why her and May were turning into smoke? Like, like that was weird. A weird decision to make if you've
seen Lost, right? Haven't you, Brandon?
A weird decision for Anastasia to make if she's at the end of the day gonna let Osha go with Soul to do something that looks very threatening without any explanation as to what's going on. But I guess that's like kind of the whole point of this episode is that people just do things in the heat of the moment that causes a lot of misunderstanding and harm.
Brandon, what was the first thing you mentioned before you said with the smoke thing, and what was the other thing?
The Soul saving Osha over May.
Yeah. Okay. That's.
And his obsession with Osha was weird. Like he's like, I gotta save Osha. May's evil, but I'll save Osha. Like immediately, he even like sees May. He's like, Osha, is that you?
Why isn't he saving both? Like they're just 2 little girls. I can lift Kira up with like one hand and probably.
Yeah. So this is the like part of like when people point this out, I go, I mean, come on, really? I think like in terms of storytelling wise, they just they came up with this scenario, and you may disagree with this scenario that they came up with for Soul to decide between Osha and May, but it ultimately informs the character of Soul in terms of the things that he has, the choices he has made, which is the title of the episode, the choices that he has made in terms of saving Osha, accidentally killing Anastasia, not again, I think that also feeds into his lack of understanding of one's culture, even though Indara tries to educate him in an aspect of the witch culture of whatnot. So I mean, like, I hear that, but I just I personally dismiss it because it's just more about Soul's character and his arc in terms
Not
of
being able to use
how
the
it
Force
forms
to
him.
make two little girls float instead.
I mean, look, I think you can point to a lot of other situations in Star Wars where you go, well, couldn't you just do the Force?
Sir,
all
listen,
that?
I knew
Obi-Wan,
Qui-Gon Jinn.
like
This is
Obi-Wan
what
could have Force ran to Qui-Gon, right? We talk about that all the time, but it's not really a big deal because the story
I knew.
is about
Listen,
Qui-Gon
Frank.
dying.
I knew Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you, my friend, are no Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay.
Neither is Soul. Sorry, that's
Okay,
famous.
so what are you saying here?
Nobody's Obi-Wan Kenobi. That dude.
I know how they had to make that
twice,
choice.
bro.
And look, you got to save one. If you can't save them both, you got to save one. But I thought it was, and then he didn't even use the Force to save the one little girl. He had to still run and catch her with the hand. So I just felt
Force,
that
man. like a video game.
it just felt a little awkward that like he wasn't using the Force a little more proficiently. But maybe he was just torn up inside. But
yeah, I think you could point to that saying he's really emotionally wrecked at this point. He just
but he could have still done it. Let me finish.
He just killed her mother, and he's like, "Fuck, what did I do?" And
but
now
he could have
Indara's like, "Go get the
still
girls."
had that scene where they're both floating up there, and he's at both, and then shit's falling. You know what I mean? Like, but he had to make that choice. So I get it. I thought that.
Sure, I'm not gonna lie to you. I kind of had that same thought too, but I was like, "Is it a big deal? Really? No."
I just feel like this episode made me appreciate Obi-Wan and Anakin more. Like, it's even though Torben does show off some of his cool skills and stuff like that, it just feels like Obi-Wan and Anakin in their prime would have whooped the floor with these Jedi. And maybe that's the point, is like we got to know how special Anakin is and how he was the chosen one. And that in this era, the Jedi aren't used to battling. Like, you know, think about the Jedi in the era of the Clone Wars. Like, they're forced to be generals and warriors. And these are just peacetime Jedi that are just kind of, you know, the first time training and stuff like coming out of training, doing these.
They're literally using metal detectors to find a virgins on like an uninhabited planet. Like, this is what our day to day is.
Oh my god!
I will say, in terms of Torben's twirling all that, I immediately thought of Yoda's line in terms of younger Padawans these days are, you know, really high on themselves about their abilities, and I think all of that was like unnecessary. All the twirling, it's actually really unnecessary because he wasn't like being absolutely peppered with, you know, shots from those witches on the bridge, whatever. I think it's like he could have been a little bit more like.
But I feel like, you know what, I'm usually not a defender of the twirling. I'm usually not a defender of the twirling, but I feel like when you're moving back and forth, you're using that momentum, and it's like you, as a Jedi, it's like you're doing this twirl, and you know that by the time you get down here, that one's going to come down there anyway. So I'm not really splitting hairs on that. No,
I'm not splitting hairs on it either. But I'm saying it points towards the mentality of a younger Padawan who's in learning new abilities and feeling big about themselves, about what they know, and kind of quote unquote showing off.
Like Obi-Wan on Naboo. Remember Obi-Wan on Naboo? It was from the trailer, the original trailer of Phantom Menace, where they take care of the droids when like they jump off the bridge, you know, when they're sneaking into Naboo, and then they take care of the droids, and you see this little twirl of Obi-Wan.
I don't remember that.
I see what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Torben, though, what's his deal? He's like, I got to get back to Coruscant, man. He's
that
like,
that part.
He's going
got a
stir
girlfriend there,
crazy.
Man. He's got a girl. He met a chick at the Outlander Club, and if you don't call in like 3 standard weeks, man, you're blowing it.
Brandon,
I've never wanted anything as bad as Torben wanted to get back to Coruscant. That's what I'll say.
Brandon, what did you think of the kind of the new, I guess, revelation in this episode that the reason why the Jedi are on this planet is because of the hyperspace disaster, and they're looking, and Soul says, looking for a virgins in the Force. What did you think about that element of this episode?
Yeah, well, first of all, like it showed right off the bat that the Jedi weren't there like maliciously. They weren't like, oh, we found out about this coven, we're gonna go there and steal these children, even though it's not part of the Republic. It was just like they just happened to stumble upon them. So I liked that revelation, and then I like the idea that that's maybe the reason why the coven is there, is because this planet is a virgins in the Force, and they tapped into that power to create Osha and May. And I guess, you know, just like their little rhyme says, like it sounds like they were one person that was split into two.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, again, people going, oh my god, this ruined Anakin and the Chosen One. It ends up being something completely different, probably, at the end of the day. Yeah. So it's like, we all just jumped the gun. Wait until a full season comes out before we start losing our mind. So I liked that element for sure. And I I also kind of like, I've always thought of it like, because Yoda is like hanging out on Dagobah next to like the dark side cave, which is like also like a Virgins in the Force, and maybe that's part of the reason why the Empire couldn't find him, is because it was like blocking his Force abilities from being sensed, because he was next to like a big pocket of Force energy. So maybe that's why like the Coven also, in addition to tapping into this power, they're like, oh, we can hide here and no one will detect that we're using the Force.
Sure, yeah, kind of like the same. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It has these layers to
Isn't
it.
that they say that the Jedi temple on Coruscant was built over a Sith
temple, yeah.
Sith, temple originally, and it was to help hide the presence.
The Jedi like to do that. They're cool.
Yeah, Ken, what did you think about this Virgins in the Force aspect?
I like anything that you get a little homage to the movies. So you hear that, and you hear Qui-Gon saying that too. So yeah, it was interesting that they were out there like on a fact-finding mission. So it does take like I said, I've said like let them cook. So as much as some of the stuff I don't like about this episode, a lot of the things that were people freaking out in episode 3 are remedied in this one. Just like I don't feel like anybody's gonna live to tell the tale at the end of this season. I think next week's gonna be a bloodbath, and then the secret will be safe about the millennia. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we can move on with our lives.
Kiedi Mooney watches the whole thing.
Until season 2, starring Mace Windu and Yoda taking on the Sith.
I was thinking maybe we were gonna get a Yoda cameo in this when she was like, "Oh, I'm waiting to hear from the council," and maybe Sol would walk away and Yoda would pop up and be like, "Leave those witches alone, you should." That would have been interesting.
Oh man, the internet's gonna lose it when for good and bad when he shows up eventually. Probably season 2. I think the director said, or showrunner said, no Yoda this season.
Yeah,
but they also
all
kinds of things. Chimera was. Manager Quinto was like, "Oh man, I'm so jealous I didn't get to train with a lightsaber, and all my co-stars did." Meanwhile, the dude was training harder than anybody.
Right.
That's a total Andrew Garfield right there.
100%.
Right around No Way Home.
Something I thought that I liked seeing in this episode was how Indara challenges Sol about how he's approaching the testing of May and Osha, because I remember watching episode 3. And when he's testing Osha and talking about, there's thousands of other children there, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I feel like I didn't like the way that came across. I didn't like the way it came across when he pulled out the lightsaber in front of Osha, initially in front of the Coven, like, I think you could be a good Jedi. And it never rubbed me the right way. And I was glad to see Indara point that out of like, you're like leading her on, or leading her, to a conclusion, but he's like, yeah, but I think she wants to be a Jedi. And at that point, while it is true, he doesn't know that outright at that point. And I like that Indara was, like you said, Brandon, justice for Indara, because she was truly a Jedi master here in terms of imparting wisdom. She even tells Sol, I don't tell Torben the answers that he wants to hear or whatever. He's got to, I give him, things he needs to know to figure out the answers for himself. I don't just feed it to him, which I think is a wise kind of, old school way of teaching somebody, and points out to Sol that this is why you don't have a Padawan, not yet. So, Kevin, what did you think about them or Sol, I guess, and to an extent Torben, defying the Jedi Council? What did you think about Jedi Council saying, leave them alone? They're like, we're not going to train Osha, leave the Coven alone, we've already interfered too much, and yet Sol and Torben head off to the Coven anyway. What do you think about,
I think that
the definitive answer from the Council saying, don't touch it?
Yeah, I think that they had good intentions, I agree with Brandon. He was obsessed with Osha a little. Like, what did Osha have pictures of him that are compromising or something? That's a stupid joke, but and it's not a sexual joke. It's never mind. But I just feel like the whole sequence. I think Sol meant well. Torben's just a kid, know. He was showing flashes of what Anakin, when he's frustrated, and Obi-Wan's holding me back. He just didn't want to be there anymore. He wanted to get back to the Outlander Club on Coruscant. So, I do think that that's interesting, and it just goes to show that Sol. I think Qui-Gon and Sol are kind of. There've been a lot of comparisons, and even the actor said that he was channeling his inner Qui-Gon, and I think Qui-Gon a lot of times would go against script and go against the orders. So as far as that goes, yeah, going in there and it just, I think that they didn't mean for all of the nastiness and horrible things that happen. But it's like that movie, Very Bad Things. Remember,
I don't.
where they're at a bachelor party with a dancer and the dancer accidentally gets killed, and they just keep trying to like fix it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. Or like The Hangover, like it just,
Okay.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. These
I think I
people,
can vaguely recall this. Yes.
these people just got way over their head, and then it just blew up into this crazy thing. I mean, I don't think anybody counted on that whole stone building to catch on fire, but it did.
I will say, I'm like, okay, we still need. I don't look. Do I need an explanation? No, because it is what it is at this point. But it's like the way they drew it up doesn't really make sense, and I feel like I feel like it'd be like, why are we going to go back and revisit how it actually blew up? It blew up fine, whatever.
Maybe.
I think it's kind of a quote unquote misstep in the writing or whatever of the whole thing blowing up, which I guess didn't really need to happen because the witches are dead. And when Indara severed the connection, Mother Anastasia is dead. Coral fucking eats out of there. So like, why did the whole thing have to really blow up to begin with? Because of the fire? I don't know.
To separate May and Osha, obviously.
Well, sure. I guess that's true. To get that bridge sequence, I guess that's what you would go for, or that's the reason why. I guess. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I think you could have done that a different way. Anyways, but they did what they did.
Hey, maybe that mountain had large deposits of like magnesium in it, and which is very flammable.
Okay. There you go. Listen, you need to do a science, Brandon Hannis on science.
They were sitting on a magnesium mine the whole time.
They didn't even know it. Wow.
It's fine. It was just, and I think you revisit it because you do want to show it actually, because I think they're setting up a double turn here. I think that Osha's going to be bad by the end of the season.
Sure.
And May will be good.
Yeah.
And you got to show that May wasn't in there being like crazy, like fire starter, like I'm going to kill my sister.
Yeah, because they did.
She was freaking out. She ran back to her mom to like, and like. And so when you see it from that angle, it's definitely. But again, if this is an episode where you're seeing it from the Jedi's angle, right?
Yes,
and episode 3 was from the little girl's angle. Well, then we should have seen that she didn't mean to do that from the little. So they were picking and choosing what angle. It was just, let's watch the flashbacks again, and we're gonna pick and choose what parts we're gonna go in on now to reveal the full story. And to me, it just like it rendered. When you rewatch this series as a series, are you really gonna watch episode 3 now? Now fully.
I was thinking the same thing.
Episode.
I was thinking the same thing because I already know this part of the story. I don't think if I did a rewatch of the series, when I do a rewatch of the series, I think I will skip 3 and 7.
Yeah, or watch 7 first. Watch it first,
or even that. But yeah.
I feel like episode 3 was from Osha's point of view, and then this was everything else. Is like the way.
I mean, certainly.
That it kind of boils down.
It is, but then again, it goes back to if you are paying homage to the Rashomon, then you're supposed to give specific points of view, contradictory points of view from the different parties, not a amalgamation of the Jedi and May's perspective, and then you have Osha's over here because May wouldn't have the same perspective as the Jedi, So yeah, I think there's a legit criticism on that part.
I do think the whole like obsession with Osha is so like weirdly immediately discriminates against May. Maybe it's because of her forehead tattoo. He's like, nope, not gonna train that.
Damage goods.
He's gonna show up next episode, be like, May, as an apology, I got a tattoo also. But then also, that whole scene when he was like, he's basically like he's like, Osha, did someone tell you to fail this test? And then he goes into that whole thing, and then he's like, May, did someone tell you to fail this test? Good. You can go now.
You can go now. I didn't want you anyway. The one line that May says to Indara and Sol in that testing, which I thought was really, I think, a key part of all of this, and even StarWars.com even highlighted this moment, was May misremembering the wording from Mother Anastasia, the description of Ascension, where Mother Anastasia says, Ascension is about walking through fear. It is about sacrificing a part of yourself. And May recites it as everyone must walk through fear, everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny. And I was like, oh no, this is why it all pops off when May says that. And then Solo's like, see, I told you, we got to get in there and get these kids out of there, you know. And then Torben's like, hell yeah, these kids are our ticket out of here, which I thought was kind of a weird flip. I guess I want to ask you guys about the possession sequence of Torben and Anasea in there in that conversation. Kevin, you have any thoughts on what happened there and how that turned out for good old Torben?
I thought it was well done, but we knew he was going to get possessed, so it wasn't like I was just, again, it's great content. It's just in the order that it was presented to me, because it's like I liked how they did it, and I liked the sound design. It was really good. Her voice making it really like echoey and creepy. But like I already saw that his eyes turned black and that he's going to do something and nothing will happen and they're going to say, hey, stop. So it's like why are we watching this again? That stuff could have happened in the third one. So first time you're seeing that information to see like what's going to happen when he comes to what's going on. So, and I get it. It's just extrapolating it. And I know I sound like I'm just crapping on this whole thing, but I just think that some of the information is very interesting and entertaining. And I just think that as an editor, sometimes you look at something, you're like, if everything's in scenes and like that should have gone on the third, and maybe for a while it was, and now they decided to keep it in there this time. But I did think that it was cool that he kind of redeemed himself later, where he said, I have my memory, or my walls are forged, or whatever, about his mind. Yeah. So I thought that was like a cool callback to that. And yeah, I think upon further observation, they maybe would have been smart to keep Kilnaka away from there if they already saw what that guy's eyeballs did, you know. And shout out to the makeup team too, when he shows up later and he's all beat the F up. Yeah. Which also, if he's exiled, there's some that say, that I saw on Twitter, that he exiles himself because as a Wookiee, he attacked someone with his claw. Yeah. Not just a saber. Yeah. And then he's a mad claw, which we all know is from KOTOR. His Zalbar, your Wookiee companion's brother or father, is exiled into the Shadowlands for being called a Mad Claw because he attacked his other son, because that other son was selling him out to the slavers. So
I remember that because I played the game, Kevin.
Yeah, I just think that I love when Leslie gets those KOTOR shout outs.
Yeah, I think just to touch on this point one more time, maybe the last time, and then Brandon, you can wrap it up. I think the execution of this show has been, for me, I'll speak for myself, has been it's been testing my patience, I'll say that, because the concepts and the ideas, everything that's presented, I think is very interesting. I think some of the ways they've gone about executing those ideas and concepts can be a little aggravating. And like this episode, 7 and 3, I think could have been 1, or even not done altogether. I think is a legitimate criticism, but I think they wanted to expand on more ideology within the Force, and I can appreciate that. Absolutely. So I see why they would want to go down that road. I think to each their own, for sure. I don't know, Brandon, do you have any qualms about the execution versus the concepts and ideas of the show?
Yeah, definitely. Like we've talked about, like the editing and pacing has like been like a little off, and like Kevin says, like speaking like as an editor himself, he can see areas where he would like, oh, maybe you should have done this differently, and like this pacing is weird, and having these full-blown flashback episodes kind of like maybe brings the story to like a stop, or it's just like stuff like that has been like if you take the same footage and like spin it a different way, it could maybe be a much more dynamic show than it has been. But I do like all the ideas and like themes that they've touched upon. Like we were just talking about the whole Mad Claw aspect. I'd love for them to like dive into that more. That's like a really cool thing with Wookiees. Because it's like they're these giant monsters, but they're like, if you do anything that's not peaceful, we don't like, you're not a part of us anymore.
Flashback episodes do grind to a halt, but when done well, like where you have like ends on a cliffhanger, and they're like, "But let's take 1 week off and go back and see how we got here." It's good. Mm-hmm. It baffles me that they had to return and do a second one. Like it just, to me, unless you were going to reveal that They really did, like, this episode went to go really clear their name instead of hide some dark thing they did. But it just, to me, you could do that once a season, but it just seems very awkward when you're doing that a second time in the same season with largely uninteresting footage. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh, let's see, there's plenty of, like you said, like Rashomon, and then like Hamlet has that famous, I'm gonna butcher the names here, the Guildenstein, and it's a play that's written from the angle of two other people, Hamlet, and it's way far different, and you see things from a far different perspective. And Hammerstein and Gilderstein or whatever. In the comments, someone will correct me and be like, it's this. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Don't worry, I'm not making fun. Please,
that one I will accept.
Yeah, that one I will accept. That I'm just too tired right now. Listen, it's fun to be on two Star Wars shows when you're loving it, but when you have an episode like this,
You're not having
right?
fun here, Kevin? You're having fun with us? What the fuck?
Yeah, I'm having a great time. When you're not as excited about an episode, you're just like, oh man. But I do want to caution that, like, I think that this episode, like I said, had a lot of really cool things too that I liked, and I think it's okay to understand and appreciate the things that worked for me, and then also say, hey, some of this stuff doesn't. And I think as a whole too, I think right now fandom is so much like they either hate it, and even if there's an episode that they probably deep down like, they're digging their heels in.
Yeah.
And there's probably people that really love it, and maybe there's an episode that they don't like, but they know they don't want to do it for risk of offending someone, or other people in their timeline will be like, oh, you're on the other side. And it's like, it's okay to like have some hills and valleys, and like some episodes and like some other, and maybe like some less. And so largely this show to me has been a hit, not like a mind-blowing hit like when we were on Andor every week,
right,
really freaking out about it. But I think that there are good things. I think it's a solid addition. Some of the stuff when they're dealing with canon and stuff, you're dealing in such holy ground. It's why I'm excited for Skeleton Crew, to be honest, because like Skeleton Crew seems like it's going to be like a Goonies, fish out of water, lost in space, trying to get home, but they're not going to try to reinvent what Sith are, or have what potentially is like this immaculate conception that everybody's freaking out about the Chosen One. It's like, just do your own thing. Mandalorian was great, right? With the first 2 seasons, everybody's loving it because it wasn't really like getting in the way or rewriting things. It was like, this is a new chapter, and I just don't know. I understand High Republic's great. My co-host on Jedi Way, Laura, loves High Republic stuff, and it's cool to go in there. But I think you could still go in there without trying to rewrite what some view the Force as, or what some things have done. And again, next week, Leslie Headland says that they're going to wrap up. They're going to have an answer for where the girls came from, and that they're going to tie. But there's so many loose ends. How are they going to tie up all these loose ends in a 40-minute runtime or whatever it's going to be next week? I really worry about that. What do you guys think?
I think the explanation of where Osha and May came from, I think I'm pretty much satisfied with what we got in this episode, to tell you the truth. That, and I don't really need a concrete answer, to be honest with you. Just knowing that they were probably one, and now their symbiotes are completely identical, so therefore that must mean they were split, and that's what Anastasia probably did, using how she controls the Force, and her witchcraft. You want to throw that in there, and then instead of one child, she has 2, and it was used with the virgins on that planet. Good enough for me. I think that's interesting. I don't think that takes away from Anakin.
Be careful, Frank. You're going to be a thumbnail on someone's video.
Okay, go ahead.
There he is. Get a good still. Let's all get a still for there.
Yeah.
That's a bad one.
Because again, as Brendan pointed out and riled up people over on TikTok and Instagram, there's a difference between the Force creating Anakin, and then people using the Force to create life, which feels like what Anastasia did here was using the Force to create life and then split it in half for whatever reason she wanted to do that. I don't know. But so
which is fine. It's fine. But
yeah, it's fine. It doesn't alter.
You wish you could have just avoided that. Right, just to avoid the people.
Oh, just to appease the people who would have a problem with that. That's what we should do. That's what we should do. We should stay with the things that people are gonna have problems with.
I don't think that, but if some people like the Anakin and the prophecy, and whether it's falsified or the chosen one's all bullshit or not, just I don't know.
You're saying we should just only have the one chosen prophecy for the eternity of the Star Wars timeline. That's it. Like there could be no other instance in the entire.
Why?
Hundreds of
do we
thousands
need
of
another
years?
instance of it? Why? We had Anakin. It was great. It was done in the movies. I get it. You should have the freedom to do it. But it's like It's like Malcolm. You know the quote, Brandon. Do it. They didn't. They thought about too much about it if they could. They didn't think if they should. Maybe they shouldn't have. Maybe they should have kept it away, and not even because of the online discourse. I think they should have not brought back Palpatine. Like his end was glorious. The chosen one threw him down the shaft.
But then he
died doing so with the love of his son.
He did that Revenge of the Sith line
just
again.
Totally ruins that for me. But like, so I just
should have been a different evil, powerful guy, not the same powerful evil guy.
It should have been Kylo, man. The original was Kylo.
Okay, we're getting off track here. We're getting like I get
fired up now, Frank.
Anyways, the rise of Skywalker.
Are you having fun now, Kevin?
In order for them to have a proper Aki Festival of the Ancestors, they should have had the local delicacy of bassoon, which is a mixture of jelly beans and Minox.
Jelly beans?
I don't know how you got there, but
I was just making something up.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good.
To get back into the episode real quick, probably one of the last things before we wrap up here, the whole Indara's plan in terms of, or recommendation of, let's not tell this to the council because we can't. It's not like we can send her back to her family because they're all dead. And then if you admit your what you did here today on Brendock's soul, this kid's gonna be left alone. And then what? And then what happens? Like all this was for nothing. Now she's just left strung out in the wind. So. It's, again, another choice was made here by Indara, the way Sol made the choice of what he's done, the way Torben made a choice to go and, to the back to the coven. Kelnaka really didn't make a choice. He was just, controlled. But Indara makes
the wrong planet.
Yeah. Indara makes this choice of, for the greater good, basically for Osha, for the sake of Osha, at least, okay, look. We really messed up here. She's strong enough to wield the Force. Okay, fine. You know what? At this rate, just she can become your Padawan, and then hopefully, we'll just never speak of this thing again, and hopefully in 16 years this won't creep up. Brandon, your thoughts on Indara's choice?
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. Like the whole episode, she was really trying to do the right thing, but then she kind of gets backed into a corner where she's like,
"Yeah,
all this would have happened. All these people, all this thing, it all happens for nothing if you come clean to the council." So it's like we're in this now. Like she's like a true like ride or die homie. She's like, "Hey man, we're in this now. Where do you want me to hide the body?" Like, okay, or bodies.
Right.
So yeah. Like, I'm with it. I'm totally sold on Indara. Indara spin-off series, when?
Damn. Kevin, what do you think about Indara's choice and how she decided to approach this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a thing to, go against it. Like, I think the kid would have ended up just fine in daycare or some Coruscant service that maybe is not training him to the Jedi. Like, to completely lie about their report. It's a big move, and she's angry. She's doing it because she's angry. It's like when you, as a parent, and you're angry at your kid, but you're not that angry because you love your kid, but you're just like, oh, why you frustrate me, right? She must have been frustrated to no end. That's why earlier she even says to Sol, this is why I have a Padawan and you don't, and now she's had to clean that mess up. But it seems like just to protect the kid and make sure the kid gets trained, that's an awful lot of trickery. And also, if Yoda can sense Anakin, I sense fear, and how is no one gonna be able to read Osha? These high masters that are eventually gonna meet Osha and figure it out. You know what I mean? Yeah, and so.
Well, I mean, they did in Anakin. They still let him be trained.
Yeah, but then the but they'll be like, hey, your report didn't say anything about her having a twin sister that got separated during the explosion of the Storm Castle and all these witches died. Like, if they somehow read that, if Yoda, when they're first interviewing her, is not reading that, like, to me, like, it just, again, I sound like the old man, old grumpy old man, get off my lawn, but it just seems like that they should. This seems like they could have. Like, I know they needed the mystery of it, but it just seems like I feel like I would have been like, no, let's go tell the Jedi. Like, we'll still, because they already said that Osha's too old to be trained, so they're gonna train her anyway without that. But maybe so there's still a chance she's not gonna get trained. And now you have this big lie that you have your Padawan in on. Like, you're turning everybody to doing things that they don't want to do. And of course they're all going to get messed up. And this guy's going to do that vow and then kill himself 10 years later or 16 years later or whatever.
Here, let me present this question to you guys. We know Vernestra did not know about the twin. We know that because she said it, to Sol, like, why don't you tell me about this? But perhaps she did know about this incident where things got a little hairy and the witches died.
Yes.
But she does not know about the situation with May.
Of course, yes.
So you can disclose what happened on this mission, but leave out, and you can omit certain details that the Jedi, quote unquote, don't need to know, right? Because, presumably everyone's dead. We'll just say this is what happened, and we have Osha. We had to bring her. Sol's going to train her, whether you like it or not. Kind of what Qui-Gon was going to do with Anakin, right? So, perhaps maybe that's what's going on, or what had happened. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Brando?
Nope. I was just thinking about when Mother Anastasia was possessing Torben about wanting to go to Coruscant. What do you think yours would be? Like, Kevin, would she be like, Kevin, just say that you want chicken wings. Just say how badly you want chicken wings.
No,
and then
Kevin,
you get possessed. I want wings.
If Anastasia possessed you right now, what are you telling Anastasia right now? You don't want to be on this podcast. You want to.
Yeah, I feel like this show would be wrapped up at this point. I think she's whispering in my ear. Can we stop talking about this episode? You've talked about it now on that other show too. Or I would say, hey, can we make donuts officially something that makes me lose weight? And I'm good. Donuts and wings. Actually, I would be ripped, man. I'd look like Brad Pitt from Fight Club. Are you kidding?
Damn. Donuts. I want now I'm thinking about.
I will say this. Let me pose it to you guys now.
Sure.
Frank, you've been doing a great job moderating this panel, and I appreciate you. Where do you think how this episode informs where we go next week? I believe that I think that all four of these Jedi made a deal with the devil, basically, and they're all going to pay with their souls, pun intended. So I don't believe Sol makes it out next week. And I think that he will do a sacrifice to save May now, because he didn't save May when he could have. I think they were going to get a double turn. That's a wrestling term for when someone turns bad and someone turns good. And I think that May and Osha might swap parts, where now May is good and Osha's bad. Or maybe they both realize together, like, wait a second, fuck this guy, and they kill him. Or what I'm hoping is Tenebris or Plagueis comes at the end and stomps him out. But where do you guys think this, and it's in relation to this episode, so I'm not trying to skip past this episode. Does this episode inform you where you think the finale is going to go?
Sort of, because I think you could have not had this episode, and then at the start of episode, you have Sol's telling May, you're going to listen, and then we pick up in the next episode, and Sol's like, yeah, I killed your mom. Like, do we need the whole episode to know that? No, because Sol could have just admitted it right in front of May's face, which I think was basically what she wants to hear, is that, like, no, yeah, Sol, you fucked up, right? And he's like, yeah, I fucked up. And so, in that sense, I think, yeah, it kind of, will inform what Sol does. Now knowing the events, I think also does inform a potential sacrifice on Sol's part to save May or to save Osha. Because, back in episode 2, when they're, on that one planet where Torben's at, and they're like they're about to confront May on this planet, right? Soul says to Osha, when you were kids, I couldn't save May. Let me try now. And I'm like, oh, well, that line resonates a lot more, knowing that he had to make a choice back when they were kids. He had to pick between Osha and May, and he chose Osha. And now is his opportunity to try and save May when he couldn't, when they were kids. So I look back on that scene and I go, oh, that makes a lot more sense the way he was saying that. Because when I remember first seeing that scene, I was like, I don't know how that really makes a whole lot of sense. What the hell happened? And now I know through this past episode. So I think, yeah, there's as much criticism we can lay on this episode 7. I still think there will be ties to the finale and what happens. You'll have more of an understanding, which, hey, again, we could have learned all this in episode 3 and have a lot more understanding between episodes 4 and the finale. I don't know. You can always play that game. Brandon.
Yes.
Your thoughts on Kevin's question?
And don't pivot and ask another question. It makes me think you're not paying attention to us. I don't remember what you asked me, so I'll change the question. And no, I'm kidding.
He wants to ask so bad. What was your question? You know it.
I know. I feel like you don't remember what my question is.
I feel like I don't even remember your question. I just started talking.
Well, Frank gave a very long answer.
How does this episode inform us of where you think the finale will go? You totally lost track, man. It's okay.
The finale.
It's a long day.
I don't know if this episode informs me at all about what's going to happen in the finale. I just think we have a little more insight into the past. But as far as like where the next episode goes into the future, I have no idea.
Thanks for taking a stand.
Yeah.
Thanks for answering my question.
I think, but I would like to see Soul save May and May turn good or something, and Tenebris.
It's gonna be May.
Cool.
Okay, I have 2 final questions for you guys before you wrap up. Are we gonna see Coral in the last episode?
She is Tenebris. Whoa.
And then the other question is, will we see a Sith Master, irrespective of whether it's Coral or not? Kevin, give me like percentage.
Oh, man.
Coral appearance and a Sith Master apprentice. Or Sith Master appearance. Percentage.
Well, if we do, I mean, it would be pretty sick to see this guy. Oh, now it doesn't load, of course.
Darth Tenny?
Yeah. People don't realize he's a pretty intimidating looking dude.
Yeah, that's some wicked stuff.
Yeah, the last 2 Sith between that and the moon that is Plagueis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, it's never been established in canon what he was, so who knows? It could just be an actor. Jeffrey Rush could be.
Oh, that one actor.
That'd be amazing.
What was his?
There's one actor that still hasn't been seen yet, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
In this show?
I hope that at the end
Ooh.
they snuff him out and they're like, he's a pretender. I feel like he's a pretender, or maybe he was a former student of Tenebris, and Tenebris realized he was weak, and that's why he has the stab. He was saying I got stabbed in the back or whatever. So, percentage-wise, to keep on point, I think that like a 39% chance that we'll see a Sith Master. I just think maybe it's too good to be true. And not that this show's been disappointing me like it has. It's disappointed a lot of people online. It's also a lot of people have loved it, but for me, it's just kind of been right in the middle. So I think par for the course. Just like when we get excited, like, oh, who's gonna be in this, and like, I definitely think that it's not going to end that way. So 39%, less than. So I'm gonna go less than. I'm gonna go. It's an underdog story. But if it does, it would be great. Be great to see him get kind of snuffed out, like you're a pretender, you're not legit. And then that just goes to show how scary the Sith are. But at the end of the day, the show's called The Acolyte. And I feel like the last scene, the very last frame of it is going to be an Acolyte. And so if that's the case, maybe the story the whole time has been about how Osha goes from the good one to the Acolyte at the end.
At the end of it, Osha's like, you can call me Darth Plagueis.
That wouldn't piss off anybody, dude. I can't imagine.
The actor that everyone is still like who hasn't showed up yet, his name is David Harewood, and he was in Supergirl, and it was reported on the hot mic. So that's the old Jeff Snyder, John Roca. So we'll find out if that scoop was right or not next week, potentially. I guess I don't know. Yeah, Brandon, what are your percentages on appearances of a Sith Master and Coral?
Actual.
Oh yeah, I said Coral 0%. By the way,
Okay.
Her story's done for now. Maybe season 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, but is season 2 going to continue this story, or is it going to be like another dark side story from the world of Star Wars?
Well, how about I don't know.
They're gonna change it. It's not the rule of 2. They're gonna say it's the rule of 2 dozen.
The rule of power of many. Yeah.
If they're going to do another season, they have to explain how Yoda knows about the rule of 2 when the Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years.
Because George said so. That's why Brandon.
The only people that know about the rule of 2 are the Sith themselves, because that's why they thought they were extinct. Yoda's a Sith.
Okay.
Maybe they found a
Yoda's the
holocron
Acolyte.
of Darth Bane.
Yoda.
Maybe.
is
Exar Kun.
Sith 50-50.
Wow. Okay.
Coral 75-25.
Which way are you going with the 75-25? I don't know.
What do you like to
75.
know?
She can show
She's
up.
gonna show up. 75%.
Yeah,
Brandon?
75.
What about you, Frankie?
Sith Master. I'm gonna say like 5%, and then
Why are you a thief of joy, dude?
Because
why are you the way you are, Frank? Why are you the way you are?
I am tempering my expectations while everyone's gonna be like, "Wah, we didn't get a shit Master," and be like, "Told you." And then if we do get a Sith Master,
and you will do that.
Yeah,
too.
I know.
You will.
I'm
You'll
gonna
do the
text
told
you
with your
immediately.
little emoji.
I'm gonna call you up,
and it'll piss me off.
I'm gonna send you a teller. I'm gonna send you a Western Union saying, "Told you."
I was told to deliver this. We had a bet with the boys whether this would really pan out. So you wrote this 10 years ago?
Yeah, I did. It should be on its way now.
I'll make sure I'll be on a street with it's raining.
And then
This is how they win everybody
that's
back.
Back to the Future
the
2
Sith
for
Lord,
you, dude. That's
the Sith Lord that shows up is Darth Vader from the World Between Worlds guy.
Oh my God, that would be. I would never go back on the internet, to tell you the truth. As for Coral,
could you imagine?
Oh my gosh, Coral. I think it's pretty high. I think I'm gonna go 60% that we see her next week.
How? In what capacity? Where would she show up?
In a brief flashback of when she reunites with May on Brendock. I think that's
fair.
I think,
so another flashback. That's what we need is another flashback,
I said
Frank.
A brief, or at least
whole
May
episode's
mentioning
another flashback.
Coral being like, "Yeah, Coral saved me." Blah blah blah. She says at the Osha or something like that. I don't know. So, all right. Any final words here before we wrap it up? Okay.
Dear God, no.
Well,
I'm looking forward to the finale, though. I'm not closed-minded. Yeah. I mean, if we're doing closing remarks, episode was a miss for me. I think that overall, I wouldn't ever rewatch these flashback episodes in a retelling, or maybe just one of them, and it would be this one. So if we were to pick one, I would pick this one. Because it just seems like the third episode is just hiding back. It's holding back information for you because it's too early in the season to have the flashback. So you shouldn't have had the flashback then, and just save it for now. The penultimate episode of the season, you go back. Imagine the buzz if we didn't go back yet, and we were seeing all this for the first time. The episode before the finale, right? It would have been something special. So other than that, looking forward to the finale. Hopefully it's good. Otherwise, oh man, Frank, sorry I'm sick. I can't show up next week. Sorry.
all I could think about was Leslie Headland didn't show us everything in episode 3. She's holding me back.
Oh, we love you, Brandon.
That's gonna do it for us here on the good old Scoundrels Inc. Programming note. I actually never mind. I'll talk about that next week.
No, I'll tell you hear it now. I'm excited.
I don't know for certain. So,
yeah, I'm on the show.
This is our last episode.
This is the last episode.
He reached out to the guy that plays Tim, and he's going to be on the show.
Actually, he's replacing both of you. So, yeah. Yeah.
There it is.
He's going to
You
bring
can
all the
replace me
calf
any
I
day.
want, guy. All right. That's going to do it for our coverage of The Acolyte, Episode 7, titled Choice. We'll be back next week to talk about the finale. Whether Kevin's here or not remains to be seen, so tune in to find out. We'll see y'all next week.
Scoundrel. Scoundrel. I like the sound of that.